As a meteorologist and someone who's studied this my whole life, I couldn't have even believed that could have happened. To give you an idea, they're saying that even right now, this is likely a 1 in 1,000 year event. To give you an idea of how unprecedented this is.
الصوت منطقة دريانة.
سبحان الله، صوت يسمعوه بالميضة وتوكرة وبنغازي.
18 أو 19 فجر.
خميس 19. صوت عالي، استغفر الله العظيم.
الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
On the other side of the globe today, the last solar eclipse of this decade ignited a spectacular phenomenon known as the Ring of Fire.
A so-called Ring of Fire eclipse, a yearly event in which the moon passes in front of the sun, covering the center of the sun and causing a circle of light around the moon's silhouette. It wasn't visible in this country, but people in Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, and India were among those who got to see a big show.
A new moon, visually smaller than usual, passed in front of the sun, leaving the burning ring of light. The next total solar eclipse here in the U.S. won't be until April 2024.
Scientists are puzzled by the behavior of what used to be one of the brightest stars in the skies. It's called the red giant star, called Betelgeuse. It's been rapidly dimming since October. It used to be the 9th brightest object you can see from Earth, but it's now more than 2 times dimmer than usual. Some scientists believe that means it may be about to explode, turning the star into a so-called supernova. If it does happen, it'll be a spectacular show in the sky, but it will not pose any danger to us here on Earth.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I was reading some information online saying that the star has gone through its full life cycle a lot faster than other stars, which isn't as long. So
Right.
I don't know. It's
We'll
interesting.
see. We'll have to watch the skies.
Data from the Zambezi River Authority shows that the water flow at the Victoria Falls in southern Africa is at its lowest since 1995.
Would all this ordinarily be covered?
All of the flat parts of the rock over there would be covered by water.
The Zambezi feeds into one of the natural wonders of the world, and a low river has impacted on the Victoria Falls.
All in this dry section that's just over here. You see there's a little trickle of water there? There should be water going all the way across the Victoria Falls.
Wow, that is a dramatic and sad sight.
Incredible change, isn't it? It actually alters the whole view and perspective of the Victoria Falls when there's no water flowing over.
For decades, the Victoria Falls have drawn tourists from Zimbabwe and Zambia. This is where southern Africa's Zambezi River cascades down 100 meters. However, drought has affected the water flow.
It's still one of the most spectacular visual feasts you'll ever see, but it seems to be disappearing.
This is a sight which has delighted people for centuries, and now look at it. The impact is dramatically stark from this angle. The world's largest falls now down to a triple in places.
I thought it was just a story people used to talk about, not until I came to see this, what is happening here at the Victoria Falls. The falls is completely dry. The dry season is normal for every season to be dry like that, but this season it started as early as June. So this is one of the, I would say it's the longest dry season we've ever had.
Well, we're moving to Western Europe now, where the death toll from 2 storms has risen to 9. Spain and Portugal are among the countries worst affected by the heavy rain and violent winds of Storm Elsa, which hit the Iberian Peninsula on Wednesday but has since weakened. However, a second storm, Fabian, has followed closely behind, bringing with it more flooding.
Across Spain, Portugal and France, more than 118,000 households are without electricity. In Portugal, storm surge flooding has forced the evacuation of 250 people.
A waterfront in southern France is battered by waves and high winds, one of several places to feel the effects of 2 powerful storms in recent days. Storm Elsa swept in from the Atlantic on Wednesday and was closely followed by a second storm, Fabian, which made landfall on Saturday.
Stormy weather has been affecting parts of southwest Europe, causing flooding and extreme winds. The crew of a cargo ship off the coast of Sardinia had to be airlifted to safety after it began to capsize. The vessel hit rough seas and ploughed into a rocky stretch of coastline. 12 crew members were rescued.
Galicia, on western Spain's Atlantic tip, is no stranger to storms, but sights like this are still remarkable. A coastal promenade, awash with sea foam, whipped up by the pounding of countless waves and blown ashore by Storm Fabian's full force.
There have been widespread power cuts in southern France, and some rail services were cancelled due to the likelihood of trees falling on the lines.
Storm Elsa hit the Iberian Peninsula on Wednesday, with the following days seeing an increase in its intensity. The historic riverfront streets of Porto in Portugal were flooded as large amounts of rain fell in short time.
It was all so quick that we had to leave urgently. I never saw anything like this in Agueda.
And nature's power always fascinates people, and some get as close as they dare. It's unpredictable and it's dangerous, but it's impressively beautiful too.
The hazardous smoke that's become Sydney's new norm has coincidentally sheltered us from what was expected to be a day of record-shattering weather. While we sweated, the state's west melted, and right now a powerful southerly is dramatically dropping temperatures.
Sydney's biggest water supply choked by smoke. Every corner of the Warragamba Dam under threat as fire takes over the Blue Mountains.
Further west in the tiny town of Tottenham, a dust twister. The elements out of control, a heat map painting a concerning picture for Australia and the state.
Australia is under a state of emergency as hundreds of wildfires burn across the country right now. Those fires have ripped through towns and destroyed dozens of homes, and of course this is just before Christmas.
Brace for catastrophic conditions as an extreme heat wave hits Sydney. Temperatures will climb well into the 40s in the coming days, peaking on New Year's Eve and making conditions even worse on our fire grounds.
More than 1,100 have required emergency help this week, 26% more than normal. But as we head through the evening, some relief. The smoke clearing almost as fast as the swimmers from Bondi.
Catastrophic. It's the highest fire danger rating in Australia, and it's been issued for parts of New South Wales, including the Greater Sydney area. Bushfires are normal in Australia, but this year they began particularly early, have lasted longer, and have been far more intense.
The RFS doesn't know how many homes went up, but they do know the fight was severe.
Unfortunately, we have received bad news. There's not much left in Balmoral.
The Australian Defence Force is being deployed to assist the bushfire fight in New South Wales ahead of scorching temperatures over the next few days.
The ADF has been in and around the fire front for many weeks now. We're seeing some pictures here of where the Navy helicopter actually flew in down to the south coast of New South Wales and rescued people who were stranded as this blaze engulfed their town. They simply couldn't get out because the roads were shut, so these choppers were flown in to get them to safety.
An entire town all but wiped out. Home after home destroyed. Street after street charred black. It was a double whammy for the village of Balmoral near Picton. For the second time in just 3 days, the Greenwater fire had them as its target.
Thank you and God bless. Stay safe.
This would have been what the Prime Minister saw as he jetted in last night. He'll bring state leaders together to better respond to future bushfires, admitting weather events and climate change are linked, but
The direct connection to any single fire event, it's not a credible suggestion to make that link.
About 50 are still not contained. In Shoalhaven last night, a fire-generated thunderstorm formed, causing frightening scenes.
There's a big westerly coming up now. It's not going to help anyone.
What is this? What are we looking at here that goes beyond your seasonal wildfires?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Honestly, as an Australian and as a scientist and as a biologist who's away and looking at what's happening in the country, it's so heartbreaking for me. Really, what we're seeing is something that I haven't seen in my lifetime, is that, you know, the severity of the summer and the impact that is having, and it's early in the summer, is something we really haven't seen before. So just this last week, we saw Australia break its average temperature record. It hit above 106 degrees Fahrenheit on Tuesday. Just one day later, it broke that record again at 108 degrees Fahrenheit. And this comes after last summer being one of the warmest summers on average ever in Australia. We're seeing bushfires all around the country, hundreds of bushfires engulfing the suburbs and the hills around the major capital cities. The scale is unprecedented.
Just to kind of underscore what we are saying right now, the conditions are such in Australia that the place is effectively becoming inhabitable.
Zimbabwe is suffering its worst drought in more than a century.
In Zimbabwe's Matabeleland, people are dying of hunger. Margaret Magande and her 5 grandchildren are picking what will be their first and last meal of the day: boiled pumpkin leaves.
This illustrates just how dire their situation is. Aid organizations have told us that after Syria, this is the world's biggest humanitarian crisis. Over half the population of Zimbabwe, that's over 7.7 million people, are being pushed to the brink. You're seeing that what's happening is that it's occurring more frequently. So Zimbabwe has always suffered droughts, but they would be once every, 3-5 years. Now you're seeing it almost annually, sometimes twice a year.
Zimbabwe needs more rainfall for food to grow. In November, traditional healers invoked the Nyami spirit of the mighty Zambezi River to release the rains, but they have yet to come. And so the world's largest waterfall that separates Zimbabwe from Zambia doesn't quite look the same, with tourists asking, where has the water gone? This isn't just a tourist attraction, it's the lifeline for millions of people beyond Zimbabwe's border, because the water is used both for food and power. But look at it now. Gone is the thunderous sound of falling water. Left below are hungry animals, dying of thirst.
5 quakes, magnitude 4.8 to 6, struck this same area. And then last night, we also had an earthquake. The 3.2 magnitude quake struck near Idlewild.
British Columbia has been hit with another 2 earthquakes, bringing the total to 9 over 3 days. The latest quake struck just off Vancouver Island on Christmas Day.
Another reminder that this region is known as the Ring of Fire. A string of strong earthquakes has struck off the northwest end of Vancouver Island.
Some quakes as strong as magnitude 6. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jessica Janner Castro.
And I'm Angela Poe Russell. The shaking was a reminder of how active the region can be.
We know that this region is rather prone and more active with regard to earthquake, but is what we've been seeing in the last few days rather normal or to be expected?
It is, as one of the most seismically active regions in Canada, it's to be expected. But these have been, it's been an unusual number of larger earthquakes. So we see tiny earthquakes there each and every day, and many. But this has been an unusual sequence of larger earthquakes in that area.